Hello to you. Today, I'm going to continue on with the 6 pillars of psychological flexibility. And today we're going to talk about cognitive diffusion. I personally don't like the term diffusion, cognitive diffusion. I understand why they choose that. I understand why they made up a new word. But it also makes it a little bit harder sometimes for people to be able to access it, to be able to see like how to use it, because it's not like a word. I mean, kind of. But it starts off with the idea that we're fused. So that's where diffusion comes from, is defusing. When I think of fused, there's a few different kind of definitions that come up to me, but the one that is meant to be used here, as if it's like connected in a way that is integral to functioning, to making something continue to work. And what's really tricky about cognitive fusion is that it's really salient. It's something that you can't always see as something is happening to you, right? Or that's something that you're participating in, because it is so a part of the way that you think and the way that you experience. And so when we think about how we experience things, like what lens we perceive it from, right? Cognitive fusion is always going to play a role, because we see ourselves as identities, or we have belief systems, or we have thoughts and feelings that get shaped up over time that create the lens that we perceive and that we experience from. And so when one of those things, one of those fusions, one of those identities, one of those beliefs, one of those thoughts doesn't help us, it can be really challenging to even see it at all. And so the first step is always going to be awareness. It's always going to be noticing, and that's where the self-context that we've already spent a little bit of time chatting about. And if you want, you can go back and check that live. You can message me here and I can help you find it. But being able to notice that fusion is happening, and then to defuse from it, is the work of being able to break mindsets that no longer serve you, switch perspectives, and being able to create that future life that you want, that vision or that goal. Because you can't create something new from the position that you're in. And so becoming aware and working with the belief systems, defusing from them, is the work. I mean, it is the work, and it's the thing that happens over and over and over again, so that you can get the repetitions in for it to become automated, or to become a habit, which does happen eventually in your brain. If you do it enough times, if you experience it enough, if you shape it up enough, it does become automated. And so it's about getting yourself to that place and remembering your why. So let's talk about some strategies for fusion. Let's go ahead and just say that you've found a way to get them and be able to find them and experience them. Maybe you've done some significant levels of meditating, and you've been able to start watching your thoughts and notice when you're getting hooked by them, when they're kind of grabbing you and preventing you from creating a barrier. It takes a lot of practice, but you can get there. For the most part, I feel like I'm in that realm, although I do ask for help, because you don't know what you don't know. A solid journaling practice can help you with that too, because it gives you the opportunity to reflect upon your thoughts and be able to break them down. A coach or therapist can do the same thing, but then what, right? Then, for me, some of my favorite ones are to apply a character, because I'm very much like a fiction reading person. I love reading fiction novels. I love sci-fi and fantasy. I have got a very robust imagination. And so being able to conceptualize my thoughts, my feelings, my beliefs, or the facets of me that might need a little bit of adjusting, tweaking, honing, calibrating in service of creating my future life, I give them kind of character names. And sometimes people can think that that's crazy. I've done a reel about this at some point, but giving them a name, giving them a character, giving them a shape or a form. One that I'm working with right now is like a tree, right? And I've worked in the past with like a ladybug and stuff like that, as far as like identifying your feelings and thoughts. And then when you do that, they no longer exist as a wave or a wash or something that is intangible, right? You're pulling it down to a point and making it tangible, making it something that you can work with in a similar way that you might work with your external environment. And by doing that, you're already existing in some serious psychological flexibility, but you're also allowing that kind of experience to help you, right? And by doing this, that awash feeling, that pinpointing it down experience is diffusing, right? It is no longer like an intangible part of you, right? It's a thing, and you can talk to it, you can look at it, you can work with it in a completely different way, because it's not so much of you that it's scary to work with. So let's think about it in another way. Sometimes if you're thinking about like a word or a thought that's perseverative, a lot of the times people who experience anxiety or depression might have a perseverative thought. I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. What am I going to do? Those are ones that I've experienced. And so one way to work with those is to change the pressure, change the way that you work with that thought, and then you can diffuse from it and see it for what it is. So let's go with, I can't do this. Or why did I even bother? Let's go with I can't do this. You could sing it, right? I can't do it, right? And just do it over and over and over again until it becomes silly, right? Until there's no weight to it. You could say it 30 times. I can't do it, I can't do it, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. Eventually the words stop being words and they become a cadence or a rhythm. And then you're diffusing from that situation. You could say it in a funny accent. And then you start moving into like the personifications, right? Like who would say it in a funny accent? And those are my favorite. And I work with it backwards that way. There are more. You could put it in the context of a silly TikTok reel, right? Like that's a really great way that people diffuse as well, is by taking, those audios or those trending videos and assigning something that's scary or that's overwhelming to this silly situation and looking at it from a different perspective. As long as you continue processing with it, you are working on diffusing. And the more opportunities you give yourself to be able to practice separating from that thought and allowing it to be separate of you, and then you can analyze it in service of where you're going. So now we've got some practice in what that's going to look like. Let's talk about what you do next with it. So when you get to the point where you can see it as words, when you can see it as a concept, when you can see it as separate from you, that's when you get to ask it, like, is this true? And you're going to find that it might be true sometimes, right? You can probably find examples where I can't do it is true, right? Or whatever, your belief or the concept that you're working with in that moment. But does it have to be? That's the big one. Because I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the concept of confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is where you look for evidence to support what you believe to be true so that you can confirm its truth. And we're doing that all the time, especially with these kind of subtle beliefs. But if we switched our perspective and we played with it, we could find evidence of the opposite being true too. And that even if we just play with it, we can get examples where the opposite of what we believe can be true if we play with it and we let it be safe and we just turn it into an exercise, right? So if working with the same example, the I can't do it. Hi, Leon. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. The example of I can't do it, if we said I can do it, right? That is going to kick off a whole host of arguments in this example that are going to be pretty uncomfortable. But when we detach from the emotion and we allow that emotion to exist in the same sort of way where we can like identify it and diffuse from it, then we can also play with it, right? Then we can also practice seeing if it's helpful, if it's true. And the deeper you go down that rabbit hole, the more you're going to realize that it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be true. And then we get to the point where we ask, is it helpful? Because probably it's not. Probably it's helpful sometimes, or it has been helpful in the past. But evaluating it constantly for helpfulness in service of your vision, right? In service of your goals, in service of your values is the work here. And then breaking that cycle. So that way when we dip into that habit, in this example, I can't do it. It's a habit. It's an automated habit by your brain that has to do with the fusion to the identities that you have, to the beliefs that you have, to the thoughts and the feelings that you have, to the actions that you're used to taking. And by breaking that, it's going to be uncomfortable because like any habit, even an observable habit, it takes practice. And it's frustrating because your brain likes to do things the way that it's been doing them, because that is part of the process of like flight, fight, and freeze that helps keep us safe and alive. So when we're recalibrating, recreating within our brain, it's uncomfortable. But when we start working with, is it true? Is it helpful in service of our vision? That's when we start giving ourselves permission to create new, right? And to break those habits and create the ones that we want. And like I said earlier, those eventually become automated, right? Where the habit is so well practiced that you do it without thinking. And wouldn't that be worth it? Like instead of having I can't do it be your habit or your automated default, having like, oh, I can do this, I can figure it out, be your automated default. Like how would you interact with your experience, like your world, differently, from that perspective? And that's the power of diffusion. Noticing the parts that aren't serving you, aren't helping you, separate from them, give them whatever space you need to. And the examples that I've given are just a fragment. On my desk over here, I've got a big book called The Big Book of ACT Metaphors. And those are like full of diffusion strategies and techniques. And there's tons of free ones online too, especially if you go to ACBS, which I can help anybody with any references or resources that they want if you message me below. But finding the one that works for you, like for me, turning them into like book characters or like cartoon people or whatever, and interacting with them that way allows me to move it from like me, that makes it uncomfortable, like am I fighting myself, to oh well, this is workable, this is something that I can let go of or build up and create more. So that's the process of cognitive diffusion. It's probably one of the more complicated ones on the Hexaflex. To me, it works very tightly with self as context. You have to have self as context first and then diffusion. And self as context can be really hard to find, but once you find it, it's cool. Cognitive diffusion, you have to do 1,000,000 times kind of in order to get it to be working for you. And a lot of the times cognitive diffusion is where people get stuck. because they get to the point where they see a thing, right, that doesn't serve them. Like maybe, oh, I want to leave this job because it doesn't make me happy. But then they come up with, that confirmation bias, and they find all of the evidence to support it. And that's not true diffusion, right? Like there's an awareness there, but all of those arguments is the diffusion. Like it is the work. It is the reason that I do this job, is to support people through the discomfort of cognitive diffusion as you hop around the hexaflex. So I think that that's what I wanted to say, and I want to keep it under 20 minutes, and I'm running close to there. So if you have any questions, if you're confused, if I can provide further clarity, if you want to talk about how you would support someone through that, or how you can support yourself through that, message me below. I'd be happy to give you guys resources or talk you through anything that I can, because I care so much about this. This stuff legitimately like saved my life, as far as like the way that I work with myself and my mental health, and creating a vision that supports me and not just the people around me. And I know that it will for you as well when you get practice with it, because we've got lots of beautiful data supporting that within the ACT literature. So thank you so much. And next week, I think we have 2 more pillars left, and then we're going to tie them together. So we've got 3 more weeks of this kind of series. And I've got something really fun that I'm going to be promoting after this. So make sure you check that out for our live ACT in Action on Friday. Bye.